Welcome to AP Biology. This video is on human activities that threaten Earth's biodiversity. Many activities that humans perform today are reducing biodiversity worldwide and are leading to increased rates of extinction. Here you see some different species that are on the brink of extinction. You have the Philippine eagle, the river dolphin, the Javan rhinoceros. Many human activities have led to decrease in these population numbers. There are four main activities that humans perform that are reducing biodiversity worldwide. One is habitat destruction, two is the introduction of invasive species, three is over-harvesting, and four is going to be global climate change. We begin with habitat destruction. Here you see a picture that shows deforestation taking place. This is a clear cut of a tropical rainforest that was performed by a logging company, and when you remove trees it causes increased rates of erosion, it causes increased rates of flooding, it can cause weather changes, and you have loss of habitat for all the native species. As a result, many species die and biodiversity is reduced. The introduction of invasive species is a huge threat to biodiversity. Invasive species take place when a species is brought into a habitat where it doesn't belong. Since it doesn't belong in that habitat, it doesn't contain any natural predators or any other limiting factors that keep the population size in check. Here you see a couple pictures of some local invasive species. We have the stink bug here on the top left. We have the Japanese barberry here on the bottom right. The stink bug was brought over from Asia accidentally. It contains no predators. No animals in this area eat the brown stink bugs. As a result, their population size grows out of control, and they outcompete all the native bugs. They outcompete all the bugs that belong here. Same thing happens with this Japanese barberry. None of the animals in this local area eat the Japanese barberry, and it outcompetes all the native plants, reducing biodiversity. Here we see over-harvesting, over-hunting. On this page right here you have elephant tusks that were hunted for their ivory. We see rhinoceros tusks that were over-hunted for their supposed medicinal purposes. Overfishing is a huge problem worldwide, reducing population sizes in oceans and other areas of the world. Humans release many toxins into the environment accidentally. These toxins could be extremely harmful, and as they move their way up the food chain, these toxins go through a process called biological magnification. Biological magnification has taken place with many toxins such as mercury, such as DDT. Here we see biological magnification of a toxin called the PCB. With these toxins such as mercury at one point was dumped into the oceans, and these small organisms began consuming the mercury. Let's call these small organisms phytoplankton. And then the phytoplankton was consumed by a larger organism like zooplankton. The zooplankton was then eaten by a larger organism like smelt or some small fish, and then the small fish was consumed by a bigger fish, and then the bigger fish was consumed by some other organism. We know that as you progress up the different trophic levels, as you go up the food chain, the number of organisms decreases by 90%. And you can see that in this pyramid of energy. However, the amount of toxin remains the same. So if the toxin remains the same, but the number of organisms decreases by 90%, then that toxin becomes more and more concentrated as it moves its way up the food chain. Today we have problems with many fish. They say you have to be careful when you eat tuna because tuna contains high levels of mercury. Those high levels of mercury were created through the process of biological magnification. Here we see a biological magnification that took place of PCBs. It started off in a really low concentration in phytoplankton, 0.025 parts per million. And when it got up to the herring gull eggs, it's all the way up to 124 parts per million. So we see that this toxin became ridiculously concentrated as it moved its way up the food chain. Today we're seeing problems with these birds because of birth defects because of these toxins that are being introduced into them. Finally, our last threat to biodiversity is going to be global climate change. Global climate change involves carbon dioxide and other chemicals and other factors in the atmosphere that cause the greenhouse effect. To look at the greenhouse effect, we're going to use this picture. So the sun emits solar radiation, and a lot of that radiation is absorbed by the Earth's surface and is absorbed by the atmosphere, and that incoming solar radiation is what's responsible for heating up the Earth. Well, some of that radiation gets absorbed, and some of that radiation gets reflected out into outer space. Gases like carbon dioxide reside in the atmosphere, and they create the greenhouse effect. So they sit up here in the atmosphere, and they cause the solar radiation that's trying to be reflected to stay within the atmosphere. It causes all the solar radiation to be trapped inside Earth's atmosphere. As a result of this solar radiation being trapped within the atmosphere, we see a process take place called global warming, or an increase in global temperature. Here you see a diagram that shows a rise in carbon dioxide levels, and it shows a rise in global temperature. And this is from 1960 up until about 2010. You can see that the amount of carbon dioxide fluctuates, but that fluctuation is gradually increasing. You can see that the annual temperature fluctuates, but those fluctuations are also gradually increasing. There's lots of debates about global climate change, and I want to give you the information that we know. What do we know? We know that we have increased amounts of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. We know that having increased carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere causes increased temperature. These are things that we know. What do we debate? We debate the causes and the effects of global climate change. Here you see a list of some possible causes that we brainstormed. All right, we have increased global population, and you know that people breathe out carbon dioxide through cell respiration. More people producing more carbon dioxide increases the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, increases global temperature. We know that trees and other producers take carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere through the process of photosynthesis. Well, we're also going through massive rates of deforestation. A reduction in plants is going to increase the amount of atmospheric carbon dioxide. We're burning fossil fuels at high rates. We know that the burning of fossil fuels releases carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. We have increased amounts of livestock. We have increased amount of cows and whatever that are kept for food. And we know that cows release carbon dioxide, cows release other gases like methane that can lead to increased greenhouse effects. Or we could also say that the increase in carbon dioxide levels is a natural process. Which one of these is it? I don't know. Maybe it's all of them, or maybe it's some of them. I'm not really sure. What are the effects? Well, we've seen effects in wind patterns, and we've seen effects in water currents. These are the two major effects that we're witnessing as a result in a global climate change, a small increase in global temperature. Wind patterns bring weather that is typically in one area of the world into another area. For example, over the past couple of winters, we've seen Arctic air that's usually higher up in Canada is being brought down into the United States as a result of changes in wind patterns, and that's causing us to have more severe winters. We also see changes taking place in water currents. Here you see the major water currents of the planet, and we're seeing some changes taking place. As a result of Arctic ice melting and pushing all this cold water into the oceans, we're seeing that these ocean currents are changing. And one change that we've seen is that this tropical current right here that usually causes there to be a lot of hurricanes in areas like Florida and the Carolinas is now being pushed more up north, and as a result more northern areas like us in New Jersey are seeing some more severe storms that are tropical and normally down by Florida are now reaching us. So what's happening as a result of climate change? A lot of things are happening, but we definitely see a change taking place in global wind patterns. We see changes in global water currents, and this is changing the climate. It's causing us to have more severe winters. It's causing us to have more severe storms. What the end results of global climate change are going to be, we're not really sure. This concludes this video.